Yet with the steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of slaughter. Come from the moving past till now we stand at last. Where the white wings of our bright star is cast. Out of our weary years, out of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast light let us into the light. Keep us forever in the path we bless our feet straight from the places our God where we met thee. Bless our hearts drunk with the wine of the world we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land. Our
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear
Okay,
you.
so my screen share won't go off. Okay. Decided to share a screen and it won't go off. Let me try this again. We're gonna share. We're gonna stop sharing. There we go. There we go. Welcome everybody to the show. First of all, you heard that song. I hope you heard it. This month is Black History Month. Happy Happy Black History to everybody in the country. Black history is American history. It is world history, and I am here for it. Before we get to the comments, I had to read this comment because I almost rolled out the floor laughing. Is Paul gonna join the call?
You don't want to hear me sing. Trust me. I've tried it before. It's not so good.
See, that doesn't stop me. My dad, see, I'm like this. Oh well.
Only in the shower. Only in the shower.
Yeah. So, you'll get that all February. Because I got 2 more weeks ago. But anyway, so let's get this show started. Hit that subscribe button. I am 4 away from 400. I should be at 1,000 by now, but I'm not going to complain because I got to get to 400 before I get to 1,000. Hit that subscribe button, obliterate it, destroy it, pound it, share. We need 400 subscribers. Also, support me on Patreon. As you can see, I got the little duck back because StreamYard just costs a little bit too much for me to keep paying for it out of pocket. So your StreamYard, your Patreon support will go to help that agitating duck be removed from my stream so you can just see us plain and simple. Of course, you can also support my GoFundMe campaign. You know what it is. I'm not going to go through it, but any help you can give towards that would be appreciated. Let's roll into these comments. Real Progressives types in, hey, all, looking forward to what should be another great discussion. Also says, hey, 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 let's go. Love Connect says, what's up? This is a new person, Natalie Gardner. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. She said, amen. And we got Love Connect saying, howdy. And 86 Blackberry White, hey, all. Hey, Barry, or 86 Blackberry, put your comments in and let's get started. Paul, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me back.
And as you all know, the Sunday show, I'm going to tell you where the Sunday show came from very briefly. As you all know, I am an NFL football fanatic. And the season ended last week. And I don't like any other sports. I don't like baseball. I don't like soccer. I don't like track and field. I don't like basketball. I don't like swimming. I don't like track. I don't like race car driving. So, what am I going to do until September the 10th? That means you're going to be seeing me every Sunday until then. So there are 203 days, 207 days, pardon me, to go until the NFL season kicks off. Paul doesn't care because he doesn't watch football, but since this is my show, I care. So I'm going to keep telling you how many days it is to go until the season. Oh, apparently you love the NBA. I don't really.
I am an NBA guy.
Basketball
Not
bores
not
me
an
to
all-star
tears.
not an all-star weekend fan, but that's going on right now. But I'm an NBA guy.
Yeah. So I wanted to have this discussion on the deficit and debt because, and I'm going to say a lot of things that are going to just sound like this woman is so not smart, but it's because I don't know, is why I'm asking.
Hmm?
I don't know if there's a difference between the debt and the deficit
Yeah.
in terms of what they mean. I'm like, I think they're the same, but I don't know if they're the same.
No, they're not. We can get into that, but I think maybe it'd be best if just start off with an intro. We've had a couple of discussions before on MMT here, which, for people who don't know, MMT is modern monetary theory, and it really forms the basis for a large part of our organization, Real Progressives. It really kind of what started us on the map when Steve created the organization probably more than a decade ago. MMT, modern monetary theory, is a really critical descriptive lens for understanding how money works, what money is, and understanding macroeconomics, aggregates in our economy. And it dispels a lot of the myths, a lot of the false framing that has dominated economic discourse for decades, at least half a century. And so it allows us to see what would be possible if we had a government that actually represented our interests, average people's interests. But it also exposes what our capitalist dominated government is doing to us right now, to exploit us, to divide us, to keep us entrapped in these kind of like circular motions, red blue games, denigrating immigrants, that kind of thing. And just one other thing. So a lot of people with the MMT community over the last couple of decades. In some ways, it's grown, but in a lot of ways, it's the MMT lens. Again, it's a descriptive lens. That alone is not sufficient to making a path forward. Understanding. Steve will often say MMT without class analysis is just ledgers. It's just accounting. It's definitional. And we can get into what some of those things are in terms of the deficit and debt. But if you don't understand class dynamics and power dynamics that are inherent to capitalism now, but also are inherent to slave societies of the past, feudalistic societies of the past, you won't understand why things are the way they are, why we continue to issue bonds, for example, why those kinds of things. It's MMT is really useful for radicalizing the masses, for empowering them with this, dispelling the nonsense, dispelling the myths. But we also need, here at Real Progressives, many of us consider ourselves Marxists, and so you need a Marxist lens of class and power to understand why these things are the way they are. And what that means for us is, despite all of the good intentions of progressive electoralism and third-party movements, we really, and we're stressing this probably more now than ever, we kind of Real Progressives probably made a shift in the last couple of years, but we recognize that we can't implement what we think are good MMT-informed policy choices through bourgeois elections and parliamentarianism. So that's kind of my intro. So we believe that you really need two lenses: the MMT lens, which is critical to understanding how money works and how our economy works, and then a class lens to understand why things are the way they are and why why it's so difficult to move forward. You're muted, Tracy.
I say thank you for that, because,
Yeah.
like I said, when I thought about this discussion, and I hear this from libertarians, and forgive me, libertarians, I know y'all watch this show too. The deficit is out of control, or they use them interchangeably. So I'm always thinking, oh, well, they got to be the same, because they're using them. They're using deficit, then they're using debt, and they don't distinguish between the two.
They fearmonger about both, I'd say. Economists, mainstream economists will fearmonger about both, and politicians especially will fearmonger about large deficit spending and this accumulated debt. And so, yeah, I think you're right. Sometimes they get muddled, but we can get into what each of them are if you want.
Yes, please, because I'm
Okay.
like, well,
All right. So deficits, conventionally we think of deficits as a bad thing, and that's why the dominant framing of this is so damaging. We think of deficits like we would think of as a household, as a household, as a private currency users, and that's something that's critical that MMT distinguishes. It distinguishes currency issuers from currency users. So generally, think of the definition, the Webster definition of a deficit: a deficiency, an amount or quality, an excess of expenditure over revenue. So the idea is you're spending more than you're taking in, and that's kind of, you can think about your household, your household budget. If you're spending more on groceries or whatever consumer goods you want, and your spending is greater than your income, well, then you're going to have a deficit. And deficit in terms of economic budgeting in terms of state budgets and municipal budgets and federal budgets usually it refers to a yearly um, figure. So, okay, for the yearly budget for the federal government spending, however many trillions of dollars, and the amount of revenue the difference. The deficit is the difference between how much it spends and how much it taxes. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's clicking, but not all the
Okay.
way. 'Cause you
Okay.
know how new I am to this whole
Right.
MMT thing, so I'm like trying to slowly build my
Yep.
understanding. So thank
Right.
you. Um,
It's a yearly difference, and so for currency users, your local state, your local municipal government, or a household, those deficits have to be um, cut into your asset, right? Like however many, like if you have an accumulated amount of assets as a state or as a private corporation or as a household, if you're going to be spending, well, more than you're taking in terms of income as a corporation or whatever. Okay, then where are you going to get that money from to spend? Well, you're going to get it from whatever you have in reserve, right? But the difference is the critical importance that one of the critical importance that the MMT shows is the difference between currency users like you, like me, like states and municipalities, and currency issuers, which create their own money to spend. So the federal government doesn't tax or borrow to spend. You think about why would it? Every dollar that the federal government spends, it creates at that moment. Like you want to spend on military spend or you want to spend on healthcare, it creates at that moment. Like it goes from a appropriations bill in Congress to the U.S. To the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury, and they get their instructions to create this amount of money, and it gets spent into existence. It doesn't borrow, doesn't tax to spend. Does that sort of make sense? The difference between
it's
currency
well,
users and
yeah, and I
currency.
was reading what Left Connect said, and this one,
Yeah.
like your explanation, his makes sense. The
Mhm.
deficit is the amount of money spent each year over the amount of taxation.
Yep.
The debt is the total. Both
Yes. So
represent the amount of money spent into the economy and doesn't need to be paid back. And that's
exactly.
what I was getting to. That's why I was like,
So,
oh, now okay. It's
so
starting to, like I said, it's clicking.
right. So
I'll get there.
the debt you could think of as the accumulation of all of the deficits going back all the way to our inception of the to our nation. So all the way back to 1787, I think, or maybe it was 1780. I figure out when the currency actually started. So going all the way back to the first dollar, U.S. dollar that was spent into existence as our sovereign, new sovereign nation. I think it was 1787. That's every dollar that's ever been spent by the U.S. government. That's what the U.S. national debt. And so, what's important to remember, like another thing that's important to remember, and this goes to like the class analysis side, is Stephanie Kilton, who's a very famous MMTer, and she's excellent at explaining some of these basic concepts. But one of her famous phrases was, the government's red ink is our black ink. So, but what it leaves out, so it's the idea that every dollar that the government spends, every every deficit of the federal government is a benefit to somebody. It's a surplus to somebody in the economy. But what that phrase leaves out is the whole stratification understanding of how our economy actually works. Like those surpluses in the private sector are not equally distributed, right? You're not by just saying if you might actually pull up maybe that first graph that I had there of the sectoral balances, where the blue and red, it's a kind of long graph that separates that one. Yeah, right. So Stephanie Kelton, or just like mainstream MMTers would say, okay, look at it's a mirror image of what the government, the government's deficit is your surplus. That's what she would say. Their red ink is your black ink. But what that ignores, it lumps you and Elon Musk together. It lumps, General Motors and you together, right? And you're not General Motors. You don't have the same class interests that General Motors or Elon Musk has. It ignores the fact that our government operates for capitalist interests, and those public deficits are not distributed at all equally. And the state is always, every state is always a tool of class interests, of class oppression. It's always, it's always a manifestation of the ruling class oppressing the subordinate classes, right? So its actions are always a manifestation of class interests. And so, just saying like, oh, their black ink, their red ink is our black ink, ignores all those distributional qualities of our economy. There's an enormous, and we had a Bob Williams was a recent guest for Macaroni and Cheese, and he has this entire book called "Funding White Supremacy," and it's all about how unearned income channels and tax schemes, and not only that, but just the exploitation of labor, feeds not only the differential between working class and capitalist class wealth and all that kind of stuff, but it actually funds white privilege and white supremacy. That was what his whole book was about. So there were actually some comments in the
Yes, because
chat,
I
and if
can't
you
see
want
the share screen, so I got to stop sharing screens and then jump
okay,
back over. So let me stop sharing and get over there because I have a follow-up question.
yep.
Okay, let's get right back to that. Let's see. Let's start here. Private sector should be specified.
Right. So yeah, the private sector. I think he means as opposed to public sector or the foreign sector. So there, in the graph that was shown, I think the blue was the private sector, and then the foreign sector is a separate sector. There are three sectors: the public sector, the private sector, which is domestic, and then foreign sector, which is also, I guess you could say, non-governmental, right? Like there's governmental sector, and then the governmental sector, and then there's non-governmental sector that's separated out into a private and foreign. If that, I hope I didn't butcher that.
Yeah. So next one, most surpluses go to war machine and individuals in the ruling class. Then Left Connect states its accounting debits and credits is always has to balance out. Government
Yep.
debt is private credit, but each time they say debt, think positive private money supply. So the national debt clock. And
So yeah,
this is where I'm. Oh, go
so
ahead. You go ahead.
yeah, no, that's what he's saying. So the national debt clock is actually the total private money supply of money, right? So it's often referred, like you could just kind of flip it around in terms of this Skelton's kind of framing. Which again, it leaves out the stratification angle, but the national debt clock could really be called the private savings clock. The national accumulation of all our assets. But again, those assets are not equally distributed. It's like it's wrong to fearmonger about the national debt, but you also just can't ignore how those assets are stratified and how those surpluses are stratified, right? Like we have insane, um, such an insane concentration of wealth and income in this country, and it serves the ruling class because the state is a tool of class interests.
Think what's confusing me, and this is where I again, nobody laugh at my questions, but I
Mm.
just it was confusing me is when I think of MMT, I think, okay, the government creates currency. And just correct me whatever I'm wrong. But then we say deficit slash debt, and it seems like, well, if the government is creating currency, then how can we have a debt and deficit? That's what's not, that's where my brain is doing a disconnect.
So again, it's the deficit again is just the difference between what the federal government spends and what the federal government taxes. And it's not like it's fear-mongered as though these deficits are unsustainable. That that's what's fear-mongered about, and that the debt is unsustainable, that the accumulation of all these deficits over time are unsustainable. But it assumes a framing as it that our our federal government, which is a currency issuer, is actually a currency user, but it's not. It doesn't spend. It doesn't tax or borrow to spend. That framing is what dominates. All the talk shows, all the political talk shows, all everything that's said on the congressional level, or comes out of Trump's mouth and Musk's mouth. They say these things endlessly, and they're absurdly wrong. They often contradict themselves too. Elon Musk says, like, "Oh, we're spending too much, but we're also running out of money." How could that be? How could he be spending too much while also running out of money? If you that the government prints too much, but it also it's running out of it. How can it run out of something that only has the capacity to create out of nothing?
Yeah,
Like
I
they,
think
they sorry.
yeah, I didn't mean it right, but I think that's where I'm not making the connection. It's like there's something in my mind that's missing that
Mm,
can't connect the two. And I think that's where my confusion is because when I hear deficit or debt, well, when I hear debt, I think, okay, I got a credit card bill, I got a car
right,
payment, I got a mortgage,
right,
right? I know the federal government doesn't work like my household budget. Now, that
right.
much I know. That much I know. But when I think about taxes, I think about, okay, I'll hear some libertarian slash Republicans say go up on taxes to bring down the deficit. And I'm like,
Yes,
well, that would make sense if it was running on like a household budget. Like that would
right.
make sense because you got more debt, you got to bring in more income. But if the government is creating its own currency, then it doesn't need to do that. Right? That's where my mind is
Nope.
just like, okay, I'm not getting it, and I don't know what it is. I'm not getting, but that's the part I'm like, okay,
I think they
let me
exist to
recut this again.
I think they exist to confuse the American public, you and everyone else. And so yeah, um, that's true in terms of that taxation angle, and then in terms of the national debt angle. Like they want you to think as though our monetarily sovereign national government is somehow revenue constrained, that it has to tax more. There's this famous quote from Margaret Thatcher that socialism fails is you always run of other people's money. Well, again, the the government creates its own currency. It doesn't take from others to spend elsewhere. I know it's counterintuitive, but it's really, really important to understand that taxes do not fund spending. And I think so. I think
Yeah,
Rodney's better than
Langston
hearing that.
said taxes don't pay for anything. The
Right.
federal government taxes to remove those dollars from the money supply to control inflation and create demand for currency. Um,
Right.
that's where I guess because I have very I don't even know if my understanding it's like I should be understanding something else before I get to MMT, and I just kind of jumped into. I'm like,
No,
wait a
no,
minute,
no.
wait a minute.
No, yeah, so yeah, again, it's a paradigm that's been repeated nonstop, and so people have this kind of false framing in their head. Taxes exist first and foremost to create and Rodney said it in the chat. He create first and foremost to create demand for the currency. If taxes at the federal level didn't exist, the value of the currency would drop to zero. The state issues taxes, the state meaning the federal government, the currency issuing government, issues taxation to force you to need that currency and that currency alone so that you can pay your taxes. Every dollar, you have to think about it like the first dollar that was spent into existence in 1787 or whatever, they didn't get that dollar from the colonial people who hadn't had any dollars spent into our economy first. The government has to spend the dollars first for those dollars to be taxed back afterwards. Does that I
Right.
know it's
It's
counterintuitive,
kind of
but
make yeah, it's like, wait a minute. It's kind of making sense because like state taxes, I understand because the state of Indiana where I live does not create currency.
nope.
So it would have
Right.
to tax to pay for roads and to pay
Yep.
for teachers and hospitals and fire hydrants and all those things.
Yep.
But it's the federal piece that I'm like, okay, I guess I'm asking, then what are we federally taxed? Because we pay Social Security tax, we
Yep.
pay FICA, we pay
Yep.
whatever that other federal tax is. What are we paying
Yeah.
federal
Income tax.
taxes
Yeah. All these.
for?
Sure.
Income tax. It's like, okay, I'm paying this for some reason,
Yep.
and it's
Yeah.
not,
So.
that's where the
Yep.
clicking part for me, like once I feel like I get that, then I could kind of move into other
Right.
things, but I don't get, like I said, I get why the state taxes, because again, um, you got to pay for roads, got to pay for teachers, got to pay for other things. But the federal government, like, well, why am I paying FICA taxes? For what
Right.
point? What portion? I'm not getting it portion.
Right.
And how
So
does
so
that
that
relate to the deficit?
Sure. So that the first part, the first part which we talked about, taxes paid to currency issuers exist to create that demand for the currency. You need those U.S. dollars, and only you need to work for those U.S. dollars that the government spends into the economy first for you to pay them back. So they I think Steve had this it might have gone through the CB4, but like it's as if um the the state needs to create unemployed people in order for it to create the economy. Unemployed people meaning unemployed in US dollars. It does, like, you need to work for those dollars to create the economy, right?
Okay.
If
Hmm.
you need to work for those U.S. dollars, the state creates an obligation, repayable, extinguishable only in U.S. dollars. You can't pay your, you know, tax in euros or yen or candy canes or like anything, right? You can only, or Bitcoin. People with the Bitcoin people were talking about crypto and all that kind of stuff. You can't pay your taxes in crypto to the federal government. Even at the state level, where they're trying to push these kind of like crypto schemes, they would be
That's
converted
a
into
whole
dollars.
discussion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
that's
a
something
whole.
else.
I'm like, yeah, you talking
That,
about really?
I,
You're talking about me
I
getting
don't
this
want
nice look like
to. Okay.
what, and
All
then
right. Okay.
and what?
So that's the first reason, right? That's the first reason for
Right.
taxation.
Okay.
There are three others though. So and some of these are kind of more like I think they're easier to understand than that first. Even that the first one is really, really important and maybe the most important. But taxes also exist to control income and wealth distribution, right? So right now we have extraordinarily regressive taxation system that benefits the extreme wealthy people, and exists as class war against the working class, and that includes FICA taxes. FICA is maybe the most regressive tax in the world that you have to pay out of your yearly income. It's insane that you would have to pay your out of your extremely meager income to finance. And again, this is not how it works, but like this is the conception that actually FDR came up with when he put forward Social Security, but that you pay these taxes in order for the federal government to afford Social Security. All that's nonsense. That's not how it works. The federal government could fund Social Security, all sorts of other programs without FICA at all. They could, and actually FDR admitted this in a quote that okay, this is just a way to get the program passed. It has nothing to do with the federal government's capacity to pay for these things. A third, taxes at the federal level exist to influence certain social behaviors, incentivize behaviors that the federal government wants, disincentivize other behaviors that it does, like smoking, or incentivize the use of the purchase of EV vehicles, right? Like it wants you to buy these things, or it wants you to not do these things. Okay, it institutes a tax on those things.
Like
And
alcohol
finally,
tax.
say again?
Like taxing alcohol.
Yeah, exactly. Like taxing alcohol, right?
Okay.
Exactly. So it sees these as social ills or social benefits, and so disincentivize or incentivize them. And then the final one, which I think Rodney also mentioned or implied, is it's indirect taxation at the federal level is an indirect inflationary control. So it reduces the private sector's ability to spend and bid against the government over limited resources. So trying to think of it like an example, like if the federal government wanted to build a bunch of houses or something like that, and there's a limited supply of wood, right? So like or whatever raw material you need to put into those to make those houses. Okay, well maybe the federal government would, like in extreme circumstance, would have put a tax on wood, so that the private sector had less capacity to compete against the federal government for that limited resource. So those are the four reasons for taxation at the federal level. None of them are about none of them are about funding social programs at all, and that's really important.
Yeah.
You might want to go back,
ladies and gentlemen, a whole lot of comments here I'm trying to read and listen to Paul because he's saying stuff I need to know, and so I'm gonna have to go back and watch this. But we're gonna just catch them up because I want you to comment on all these at once. And then I'm going to move into my question about propaganda and the debt and the deficit, because I think that's what's playing a role in my understanding. So we'll hit this. Hello, sis. Where MMT breaks is that we already exist in an integrated global currency system with established debts and exchange obligations. Such a monetary Brexit is a go it alone strategy. I know. Wait a minute, hold on, because we got a whole bunch more to go because they all kind of connect to each other. So then Left Connect says exactly, you can't pay your taxes in yen, pesos, British pounds, etc., only in USD. And then this question came. Perhaps I'm missing something. Are you arguing that taxes are bad or shouldn't exist? I think I asked that question because I was asking, well, why are we getting taxed then?
Right.
And then he comes back and says, this might help. You've heard people say, we just don't pay our federal taxes and and that will show. But since the government doesn't use our taxes to spend, not paying them would do nothing to hurt them. And then it comes back and says, "Boy, y'all making comments today. Thank you." Or it's an argument about how taxes are being managed and distributed. That's what I see. But I know about as much as MMT as little. That's why I have Paul on so many times, because I'm trying to understand. And then 88 Blackberry says money is irrelevant to the federal government. It's all about availability and resources. And then also says taxes are necessary to give the currency back. Now that, out of everything that was just said, that I get. Like that, I'm like, okay. One, it was said in the way I'm like, oh, now that makes, not that you weren't making sense, but that hits me right at my elementary level of understanding. Like, yes, taxes don't have, they just give the currency a value. That makes so much like, yes, that makes sense to me. And you already know this. We are going to do a show about Bitcoin. God, if you don't think I understand MMT, wait until you see my understanding of Bitcoin. Child. It's pathetic. I know every Tuesday when I come to these, because Look Progressive sponsors a group meeting every Tuesday to listen to a past podcast. And I sit there like, I'm not gonna say anything, because these people already think, this girl don't know anything. So she's just gonna sit there. I just sit and I listen, because I'm like, I don't know. So
I think it's actually important for in those Tuesday and Steve, he'll tell you, Steve Grumbine, who's our host of Macro and Cheese and the founder of Real Progressives, he'll tell you that we want you to ask questions at those Tuesday calls.
No, you don't want me to ask questions, because I'll be like, I already asked if fiat currency has something to do with the car. We really don't want to go there. We really do. I'm like, you really want me to ask questions? No, you don't.
Well, we do, because it should be a safe space for people who are unsure of these things to try to get clarification. So we really do. I mean, I know that, and it's not, these concepts are not easy to understand. So you shouldn't feel. I know it's tough, but you shouldn't feel embarrassed at all to be able to ask questions when they
I'm
come up.
glad you said that, but I'm probably not. Okay, so we're gonna hit these three, and then I'm gonna ask my question.
Okay.
So taxes pull money out of the economy, controlling inflation, reducing inequalities, and create the values of dollars. And this comes back and says dollars equal economic growth, social political stability, strength of law, raw materials, etc. It isn't just about the ability to tax. You can tax all you want, but if the currency is garbage, the taxes won't accomplish much. Failed states prove this. Yeah.
Well, again, I think what that leaves out is, from an MMT perspective, the failed states, and you think of, like, when we talk about Weimar Germany or Zimbabwe or Venezuela, is the strength of the economy is not. I mean, this what gets sends libertarians and anti-MMTers into a tizzy sometimes, when they talk about these kind of failed states, is though they were always, the failures were always a representation of real structural problems in those actual economies, whether they're you had droughts, or you had war. And think of, like, Weimar Germany. This is post World War I Germany. It lost a couple million Germans in World War I. It had a significant part of its manufacturing sector, the Rhone Valley, that was confiscated from it as part of the Versailles Treaty. also as part of the Versailles Treaty. It had this massive amount of foreign denominated debt. It wasn't denominated in Deutschmarks, it was denominated in French francs. And so you had all of these, and you can go to Zimbabwe too, in terms of like how regime change restructured their economy and led to insufficient food production, or Venezuela, similar problems. So those kinds of failed states, what MMT really recognizes is that it's. I think Rob said this earlier in the chat. It's really about resource availability and productive capacity. Those are the things that really affect an economy. Not how much what your deficits in your own currency are, or what debts in your own currency are. Those are relatively immaterial to the well-being of your economy. Yeah, exactly. Rodney, the failures are outside pressures, lack of a war, lack of resources, human labor included. Exactly.
Yeah. So here's where I want to move to next,
Mhm.
because this is where this whole discussion of deficit/debt started. Thank you, because I literally thought they were the same. Now I know. See, I learned something. They are not the same.
Mhm.
See, I learned, people. I learned. But now I know, oh, well, this is the difference between the two. But here's why I started this whole discussion. Because when you watch the news or listen to and I don't want to just seem like I'm attacking libertarians, because I'm really not. Some of you are really good people. I'm just not. That's not what I want to do. Right-leaning people. No, because I've been hearing Democrats talk about this. So I'm going to take the labels off. When I hear people talk about our deficits too high, they got that big old that counter that goes I think it's in New York City, and it goes
Yep.
every day. The number increases,
Yep.
increases. Like, well, we need to bring that down. Talk about how the media plays a role in that, because I think the media
Mm.
propagandizes this. And second,
Mhm.
talk about maybe like how do we alleviate that? Because I think a whole lot of people are just like me. It's like you're not saying it doesn't matter, but you're not saying like, oh, America's gonna file bankruptcy either. It's like you're definitely not saying that. But the way it's portrayed, the way the media
Yeah.
kind of portrays it, the way politicians talk about it,
Mhm.
it's like, well, America's gonna either file for Chapter 7 or Chapter 13. One of the two, or make up a chapter. That's
Yeah.
like, it's got to get to our understanding. What does the average American, like? How do you combat
Mhm.
that when you get all this propagandized stuff going on?
Yeah, I do think that it's something that we've talked about in recent we talk about it all the time, but particularly there were a couple of guests, Macro and Cheese, Steve had on towards the later end of last year, talking about what's known as cultural hegemony, which is kind of the dominant framing of the world before us, and it obviously, again, the dominant forces of control in our world, not just in this country but across the world, are capitalist interests, right? So like they control the media, as you were saying. Like think about like who owns MSNBC and NBC and CBS and CNN, and same owner, honestly. If you really go, if you zoom out, they're the same people who own Fox News. It's just a different branding of trying to play one side off another, really. Create these kinds of capitalist media exists to divide us, to confuse us, to pit Democrats against Republicans. When I think you would agree with this, that both political parties exist to serve their donor base, capitalist interests. So We refer to it often. We talk about it all the time. Cultural hegemony. It's widespread. It's pervasive. It exists in academia. It exists in media. It exists in the halls of power. It even exists, to some extent, in maybe within good intentions people. It exists in unions, right? Like, think about like how I think about when I was a big Bernie crack guy. So what back in the day, and I always think about how unions were campaigning against Medicare for all, and there was this hegemonic narrative about how Medicare for all would take something away from union members who had fought so hard for their medical benefits and this kind of thing. So cultural hegemony exists everywhere. It's pervasive. And we have to develop strategies. And I think one of them is through shows like yours, and through Macro and Cheese, and through alternative media structures, to provide strong alternative narratives, narrative building. And they're not just alternatives, but like break the myths that are so dominant. And it's difficult because they've been repeated so many times. It's funny. The other week, I sometimes I have these like two lives where we have these discussions on a weekly basis, or internal discussions in our group chats and that kind of thing. And these kinds of truths are so obvious to us, but then once you go outside them and you start talking to what we call normies, whether they're liberal normies or progressive normies or conservative normies or libertarian normies, you realize, oh my God, they are so far away from understanding how our system
Right, and they're
actually
so
operates.
good at they're so good at they're so skilled at it. It's like you don't even know it's going into your brain. But guys, we've got another discussion. You're really doing well with these comments. Thank you for helping my algorithm, because
Mhm.
this really helps. So this is I want to highlight this comment, because this I hear all the time. I promise I hear um as much as I like her, hear Nina Turner say this, I've heard Jill Stein say this, I've heard Rand Paul
Mm,
say this. I
yep,
literally hear this all
yep,
the time. The
yep.
national debt, not this part, but the national debt is a temperature, not a real number. America, this is the part I hear all the time.
Right.
America borrows too much because we refuse to adjust down to our means. America is bloated and has been living on credit way past our income. You already shaking your head, but
Yeah.
I hear that we owe China this much money. We
Right.
owe, it's always China. It's never Russia. It's never Australia. It's never Canada. It's never Mexico. It's never Australia. It's always China. Apparently,
Mhm.
that it's like they have two sides. China's our enemy, but apparently our enemy is loaning us money. Like
Mhm.
it's like I don't get that part. And then
Right.
88 Black Berry White says, well, who are we owing money to? And then um Love Connect comes back with only they can create the US dollars. That's a huge
And
part of why that we
nobody.
borrow from China. Nobody.
Right.
Yeah, nobody. And then he also comes back with this point that I want to highlight.
Mhm.
The US sells treasuries to raise revenue. That's a truth that they don't, because I thought
Nope.
local governments like states sell bonds. Now I do know states
Yes.
sell bonds.
Yes. Again, this is the difference between currency issuers and currency users, and it's
Okay.
really important to understand. But
Well,
so
okay.
U.S. Treasuries do not finance spending. They do not raise revenue.
Yeah, this is where I
They
thought
are
first.
not a borrowing operation. Treasury sales are not a borrowing operation. In order for you to buy, and we actually had on Michael Hudson, who is a
U.S.
great,
savings bonds is exactly what I thought of. I'm like, well, they got U.S. savings bonds and they got them, and you just go
yeah,
buy them, and then you could just cash them out.
right. So they're an asset swap, not a borrowing operation. In order for you to buy U.S. Treasuries. In order for a bank, U.S. An individual, anyone, in order for anyone to buy U.S. Treasuries, you have to have the dollars in hand in cash to buy them first. So it doesn't. So the sale of treasuries, of bonds, notes, bills, which are different, these different structures in terms of like how they're temporally, the time allotment, when they mature, 5 years, 10 years, 1 year. Um, you have to already have those dollars spent by the U.S. government into the economy first. So it's not as if, and again, why would a currency issuer borrow in a currency only it has the capacity to create? It makes no sense. Like, you think about the logic of it. Why? Why would it do that? It doesn't. The sale of treasuries exists to are a um, uh, leftover convention of the gold standard, um and now they really just exist as a source of welfare for the people who already have wealth. But they convert, treasury sales convert a non-interest bearing asset, which is cash, US dollar, denominated in US dollars. My cat is gonna kill me if I don't if he doesn't say it for a second. I'm sorry. He'll be whining at me through my headphones. But treasury sales convert a non-interest bearing asset, which is cash denominated in US dollars. I know, as you can see them right there, to an interest bearing asset, which are treasuries. They don't change the amount of debt at all. They just change its form. So you could take the entire U.S. national debt and convert it into a bunch of $1 trillion platinum coins. That wouldn't change the amount of debt either. All that would do is change its form. I hope
Okay.
that makes sense.
Yeah. So again, um, um, that's what I thought of, because I'm like, I've heard so many people across the political spectrum. Well, we owe China money, and I'm always asking, well, if China's our enemy because that's the way the U.S. has framed it, why would we then turn around and borrow money from? We don't need to borrow. If we can pay for a $300 million award, not once a week, not every other week, every day,
Yep.
the
Right.
U.S. was spending $300 million. Shouldn't America be in bankruptcy
Right.
right now? I mean, it doesn't make. That's what I'm like.
Yep.
Somehow, not me, because I'm not an MMT expert at all. Needs to put it in a term where like people can get it, because I don't think a lot of us get it. We hear it. We hear, okay, the government creates currency. Okay, I got that. But then we gotta take in the propaganda, and we gotta take away, we don't, like
So
I
you think
said,
of
I know
China.
that.
So you think of China as we have a massive trade deficit with China, right? They
Right.
produce all this stuff and they ship it over here, and we buy that stuff with what do we when we purchase it, whether it's the U.S. government or the private sector, how do we get that stuff? What do we exchange for that stuff?
Yeah, we don't make anything. That's what I'm like.
No,
We don't
no,
make.
no, right. No, I know, and that's a separate issue. That's the outsourcing of our manufacturing sector. That is a real issue. But we buy those real goods and with pieces of paper. I mean, it's Warren Mosler would call it a bank statement. We exchange all those real goods and services, I guess, but a lot of like manufactured goods, consumer goods, for a piece of paper, a bank statement, that China will end up. They could, sits in there. It actually sits at the still sits at the Federal Reserve, because U.S. dollars actually never leave the Federal Reserve, but they have like an accumulated in their bank account at the Federal Reserve. So they have all these dollars that are piling up, these U.S. dollars, just cash that's just piling up. So what would they they would rather earn interest on that non-interest earning cash. So they convert a large amount of that cash into treasuries. In the same way that people who are the super wealthy in our country have all the piles and piles of cash lying around. Oh, well, they want their cash to work for them. So they buy U.S. treasuries. They buy U.S. bonds, bills, and notes. Diversify their, they could invest in the stock market or wherever else, but U.S. treasuries remain the one of the most stable investments. There is basically like a basic income. It's a interest earning unearned income for people who already have wealth, and that's why they exist. It's not they do not exist as a funding mechanism at all, regardless of how many people fearmonger about this unsustainable debt. It's not a funding mechanism.
Right. And that's the point I wanted to get to in my personal journey to understand MMT and understand the deficit versus the debt, et cetera, et cetera. We have to be more palpable, because again, if I hear one more politician, shut up. Not you shut up, but shut up. Stop trying to, it's like you're purposely pulling the wool over my eyes. Now, I'm a lot of things. Two things I am not. I am not ugly and I'm not stupid. Now, I may not know MMT a whole lot, but in general,
Right.
once I get it, I got it.
Yep.
And once I get this, I'm telling you, I'm going to run, because I think in terms of me as a person and how I explain things to people and how we can all do this, we have pitted countries as our enemies, and it's really us. We're the ones out here that are doing all of these things and making you think, oh, well, you got to pay more taxes because the government owes too much, when they could simply
Right.
create currency.
Yep.
Right? They could just create more currency. They literally could do that. Now, I know there's a danger in that and there's a nuanced discussion, but again, trying to get a general, like if I can get the general, I can kind of build on that.
Yep.
And I think these type of discussions are really important, which is why I keep having them, because I know we have all heard the U.S. deficit is out of control. And they, like I said, they got that big long clock, and it just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. And you hear politicians, I'm going to reduce the deficit. Well, how does that help you?
It exists. I think I may have said this before, but like it exists to fearmonger you into thinking that the federal government can't do these things that you want, or that if you did want to do them, oh, well, then your taxes are going to go up. Oh, you want Medicare for all? Well, then you're going to pay a lot more in taxes. That's simply not true.
We find, right. And that's what, I didn't mean to cut across you, but yet the military industrial complex, they just find it. It's like they just find it. They just,
right.
Okay, we'll just speak it into existence. Right. You can't speak it into existence for Medicare for all, but you can speak it to an existence to kill children in Palestine. Make it make sense.
Well,
and I think that's the point.
Again, as I said at the beginning, the state is a representation of class interests. It is a tool for repressing subordinate classes, subordinate class, working class, underclasses, and it exists to empower the ruling class. And that's what it's doing when it's spending absurd, monstrous, absurd amounts of money on, genocide and endless war. I mean, that is what it's a funnel. And that's what it does in terms of paying interest on the national debt, these exist as unearned income channels for the wealthy. That's and I think, as Rob said here, it's not necessary for the government to sell treasuries. You could right now, like the federal government could stop selling all treasuries. It could finance everything just by issuing currency. It's complete myth that it needs to do these things. But this kind of framing rationalizes the austerity, the extreme grotesque austerity that we've been suffering under for so long. Well, if it's the Margaret Thatcher quote that I had mentioned earlier. So I hope that
Yeah, I keep saying I'm gonna get it, but this has really helped me because like, okay, now I know. You all blew my mind saying that the U.S. doesn't have to sell treasuries. I'm like, well, wait a minute, they sell those little bonds all the time. I mean, I've seen them. And that just you learn something new when you want to learn something new. But okay, I know I've invited you on here like 15,000 times, but I'm gonna make this 15,000, not next week, because next week is the Epstein. The next couple of weeks, I'm gonna be doing the Epstein files because I want to take a deep dive into it because I found out some things. But I do want, and Paul is here, but I'm gonna and I hope you don't mind me doing this. I'm gonna make an invitation for you and someone else to come.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, sure, definitely.
Now not Steve, because we know Steve is busy, which is why he hasn't given me an interview that he promised, but that's okay. I'm not bitter, I'm not mad, I'm not upset. But whoever it is you name them, and probably that second week of March is when I would like to have you back. And then I promise everybody I'm going to do a show about cryptocurrency because you really want to talk about me being confused. Oh, I don't. I'm like, can you go to the store and buy stuff with it?
Yeah. Right. No. Yeah. Definitely. I'll just. I don't know. I don't know how much time we have left, but I do want to again, stress this other angle that MMT is really it can be a powerful radicalizing tool, but without understanding the class dynamics that are either inherent to capitalism or if you want to study Roman society, or if you wanted to study whatever feudalism in the Middle Ages or something like that, MMT would be, or if you want to understand a future socialist society, MMT would be as applicable to capitalism as it is to any of those to feudalism or a slave society. So you have to understand the class dynamics that are inherent to wherever that society is for MMT to actually be useful, because it's like, well, it's a descriptive lens that it's incredibly useful for understanding how money works and how our economy actually operates and what's possible and theoretically what's possible and what's not. But if you don't have that class angle, Steve calls it you're navel gazing. It's just ledgers. It's just accounting. They're definitely accurate, but completely worthless if you actually want to do something with it, right? And MMT isn't something you do. It's a lens that you put on in order for you to understand how our economy operates.
Thank you so very much. So this has been a fantastic discussion. I want you to tell us after this next comment, where we can find the real progressives at, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, you can. Actually, I sent you another email after the first four that actually had an image of a good all of our social media and all that kind of stuff that you should probably.
Wait a minute.
It'd be awesome if you could bring up.
I don't see it. I see the lady, and then I see a chart, and then I see 18.
There's a second email that I sent you after that first one. Should
Oh,
see it.
share the,
I hope
oh,
it's in there.
share this at the end too. Okay,
Yep,
got it. All right,
exactly.
just
There you
saw it,
go. No, it's
saw it.
fine.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a Substack that's really awesome. There's a Facebook group that everyone should join if they're not aware of it, and there's a lot of good conversations that are going on as well.
So,
Finding the
I'm
money
gonna,
document. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm just gonna say I'm gonna leave this up while you're
Yep,
talking.
yep.
Um, because I want everybody to, well, of course, watch this video again because this was really an interesting discussion. But I'm gonna leave it up there and you can go ahead.
Right. So yeah, so we have a YouTube channel where we share all of our macro and cheese podcasts with Coming John is awesome. He gives funny memes, that kind of stuff along with it. So you can find our weekly podcast Macro and Cheese comes out every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. You can find it, go on whatever podcast platform is your favorite, or you can just go onto our website, realprogressives.org, and you'll find it. You'll find it in Macro and Cheese over there as well. And every two, we have a Substack, which we need more people to not just subscribe to, but actually comment and engage in conversation. I know that there was someone in here who had some differing opinions on this kind of on these kinds of economic questions and that kind of stuff. Sounded like a leftist as well, though. But engage in our Substack, and we can point you to work articles and research papers and videos that might provide some a learning experience for all the, and I'm sure you have plenty of other people on here who have plenty of perspectives
I know
that we
this
could learn from as
Muslim
well.
woman. I'm gonna answer real progressives. Of course. I know Steve is insanely busy. That's Tracy making a joke. I know Steve is busy, but so I'm not throwing shade at him. Just wanted to make that uh, clear. Um, I have to end this podcast, but because it's Black History Month, we're gonna leave with a song that's really fundamental. Um, it's called "We Shall Overcome." Not to someday. Listen to it. Take that sentiment with you. And Paul wants to say something else before I start playing the song.
Join us if you want to join the discussion. Again, our Macaroni and Cheese comes out Saturdays. Join us for a Zoom webinar on a Tuesday evenings, 8 p.m. The one that Tracy was referencing. I mean, we are welcome to new perspectives and comments and debate, as long as you come with an open mind, in good faith. We'd love to hear from you, whatever your perspective is.
And don't be acting a fool. Um, um, that's just me being extra. But thank you all so much. I'm gonna play our song out, share my screen, and remember, take this song, take this sentiment, and just keep walking. Because I'm going to eventually, once I get an understanding of MMT, I'm going to start talking about how we explain this to people that look like me community. Because I think there's a real important segment that we're missing. We need to get more into this, but until we understand, not fully, because none of us understand it fully, but more of me, more people that look like me will always be better. I'll say it that way.
Yep.
So
I
take
agree.
this sentiment, take this, share this, like, share, comment, subscribe, support me on Patreon. Like, share, comment, subscribe, support me on Patreon. We're gonna share the song "We Shall Overcome," and we're heading out. We will see you all next week. Have a great one. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.